Chapter 8, The Whisper in the Storm. The Walton family returned from their trip to Alexander filled with excitement and shared memories. Sam and Olivia enthusiastically recounted their adventures at the amusement park, reliving the exhilarating rides and delicious cotton candy. But it was their encounter with Billy, a new friend they had made, that left a lasting impression. Billy was a wiry boy with a mop of unruly hair and a perpetual grin. He had a hearing problem from a childhood accident, but his spirit was unbreakable. Sam and Olivia had met him near the carousel, where he sat on a bench, watching the colorful horses go round and round. They witnessed a miraculous moment where Billy's hearing problem was healed right there in the amusement park, and they were eager to tell their friends about the extraordinary work of God. Back home, John Walton had fully recovered from the accident before the trip. His carpentry skills were legendary in their small town, and he was eager to resume work. John and Mary had saved diligently and decided to expand their modest home. John purchased a piece of land on a hill overlooking the river. It was a dream come true, a place where they could build a spacious house, cultivate a garden, and even raise a few animals. The construction began in earnest. John, along with hired workers, toiled day and night as the house took shape, a sturdy frame with large windows that would let in the sunlight. The garden was plotted, and Mary envisioned rows of vibrant flowers and vegetables. The carpentry workshop was John's pride, a space where he could create beautiful furniture and intricate carvings. One weekend, as the workers labored, a sudden storm swept over the hill. Rain pounded the unfinished roof, and the wind howled through the wooden beams. Everyone sought refuge inside the house, except for Steve, a well-built man working in the workshop. Steve had a stubborn streak. He believed he could finish sanding the wooden plank despite the rain. As the storm intensified, the building trembled. Steve struggled to secure the plank, but it slipped from his grasp, crashing down on him. A massive wooden beam had fallen on him, pinning him to the ground. His leg was broken, his hand crushed, and his neck strained. The weight was unbearable, and he cried out for help. But the rain drowned his voice, and no one heard him. Inside the house, the others huddled, unaware of Steve's predicament. John, who had stayed home that day, felt an inexplicable unease. He paced, glancing out the window, praying for the storm to pass. When it finally did, a frantic call came. A worker had noticed Steve missing. John rallied the townspeople, and they rushed to the site. They found the trapped workers, but Steve was nowhere to be seen. The next day, Steve's wife, Rose, approached Mary with tears in her eyes, asking about her husband. It turned out that the workers hadn't realized Steve was missing. Panic ensued, and they searched tirelessly but couldn't find him. Steve lay injured, lost in the rain, screaming for help as no one seemed to hear him. A search party led by John scoured the hill with flashlights, assuming Steve had been swept away by the floodwaters. Despite the desperate situation, Steve held on, hoping for a miracle. In his darkest moment, he heard a voice carried by the wind, reassuring him and telling him to hang in there. As he strained to see through the rain, a figure emerged and helped him, lifting the heavy wood off his body. With the stranger's assistance, Steve sat up, rain-soaked and shivering. The search continued through the night, but Steve's rescuer remained unseen. The next day, the search continued, with Mary and John's wife, comforting Rose and praying fervently for Steve's return. Meanwhile, John felt a compelling urge to check his workshop, where he found Steve, barely alive but miraculously breathing. When the others rushed to Steve's side, he couldn't speak but his eyes conveyed wonder. At the hospital, the doctor examined Steve. "You're fine," he said, bewildered. "No broken leg, no injured hand, and your neck is intact." Steve protested, recounting the heavy wood that had crushed him. But the x-rays showed no evidence of injury. To prove it, Steve stood up, disbelief etched on his face. He walked, moved his hands, and turned his neck. The pain was gone. Everyone stared, dumbfounded. How could this be? John, unable to contain his curiosity, asked Steve how he'd managed to lift the wood. Steve smiled. "A man helped me," he said. "After I prayed for help, he appeared. I couldn't see his face clearly, but he saved my life." The town buzzed with the news, the miraculous survival of Steve. Some whispered about angels, while others shook their heads in disbelief. But Steve knew, he owed his life to God, who whispered hope when all seemed lost. Laughter echoed through the corridors. "God sent his angel," someone whispered. "He heals." Steve and Rose returned home, their hearts brimming with gratitude. They named him Yahweh, Jehovah Rapha, the God who saves and heals. And in that rain-soaked workshop, faith had triumphed over the storm. And so, in Luna, they spoke of the night the heavens intervened, and Steve emerged unscathed from the wreckage. The Walton family's dream house stood almost complete, bearing the marks of resilience, faith, and unexpected miracles. Nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Walton home became a beacon of strength, a refuge for souls seeking solace, and a reminder that sometimes, even in the darkest storms, angels walk among us.